listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome everyone. Today I'm joined once again with my friend Philip Clift. For some of our past episodes, we focused on yoga, death and rebirth, and the evolution of consciousness. Today we will be discussing Barbara Hand Clow's book, Alchemy of the Nine Dimensions. Welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thanks for
nice
coming.
Nice to be back.
Yes, I know our listeners love our episodes. They're in the top every time. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm sure they're excited to hear what you have to say about Barbara Hand Clow. So, how did you first discover Barbara, and what drew you to her work?
Actually, it was from one of my first massage clients, a woman named Sharon Lord, who is kind of a mentor to me. She's an astrologist. She actually personally knew Barbara Hand Clow, or knows Barbara Hand Clow. She did several immersion type workshops with her, and got to know her pretty well. So she's like, you gotta read this book. I think the first book she showed me was it used to be called Catastrophobia, but she changed the name of it. I can't remember what the name is now, and then the Pleiadian Agenda was another book of hers. And then one day she had this book, Alchemy of the Nine Dimensions, and she was immersed in it. And she's like, this is really good stuff. So, that's when I got the book. It was right when it first came out. And, I read it then, and then I put it away for a while because it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
So put it away for a while, and then it would pop back up from time to time, and I would just, it's one of those books where you don't necessarily sit down and read the whole thing. You just kind of find something that resonates with you,
right,
when you open it, and take that in, and then put it away for a while, and then something else will come up at some point.
Right. Yeah. I definitely feel like it was opening things for me, and I was seeing them in my life, and then I would go back to the book and be like, I think this is what she was talking about.
Yeah.
It was so wild because during some sound healings and things like that, I'd actually had certain visualizations that she has graphs in her book that are exactly what I saw during these sound journeys.
Right. Interesting.
So it's like you helped me figure that out. And then she goes into a lot of the science and explains how that this is all relevant. But when I was going on those sound journeys, I had no idea where this, I was like, okay, I'm seeing, there's a portal in the sun. What's going on here? But she explains all of that in this book. Every single part of my sound journey is in this book.
Yeah, one of the great things about her is that while she's super expansive and goes off into some really wild information, she's still very grounded,
right,
in science, and she always relates it back to modern science, or older alchemical science, or whatever. So that's very grounding and very helpful for people that haven't been exposed to a lot of the more esoteric stuff.
Right. And it seemed like, she channeled this book, and at the time the science wasn't available, but it was like as she was writing the book, the
science was emerging.
Right. The guy that discovered super string theory or what, it was at the same time. So it was almost like the collective was ready.
Yeah. And
she was channeling the spiritual aspect of it, while the scientists were also discovering, the logic of it, and the formulas and the mathematics of it. And so she was keeping up with that, following the science. And then it was answering her questions, because she said she didn't even understand the upper dimensions at all, and that we're still there's still a couple things that she said we haven't discovered yet, but she's, trusts that at some point we will.
Yeah. It'll emerge when we're ready to receive it.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's so cool.
Yeah.
All right. So could you explain what the vertical axis is for us? This is a big part of her book.
Yeah. It's an axis of consciousness that originates in one-dimensional reality, which would be the planetary cores.
Okay.
And then it progresses through each of the dimensions to the ninth dimension. And it's actually, it in and of itself is actually a dimension. And she describes it as the 10th dimension.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it connects all the dimensions. It allows for the manifestation of all the dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that which interweaves the dimensions.
Right.
So yeah, it relates directly to universal and human consciousness and consciousness at all scales. Yeah, from mineral to plant, animal, human, and beyond. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah. It's also interestingly in Hindu mythology there's a term, and I believe it's what Barbara Hand Clow was talking about. It's called the axis mundi. Yeah, which is also known as the cosmic axis, the world axis, the world pillar, the center of the world, and the world tree. So, and it was a fundamental aspect of Hindu philosophy. So, yeah, a lot of the information that's emerging now is corroborated in the ancient teachings.
Right.
So,
And a lot of our ancestors, were directly tuned into the Akashic records. So they were,
100%.
the people that wrote the Vedas were tuning into the same
yeah.
thing that she was tuning into, that a lot of these ancient cultures were tuned into. So that's why I feel like it all lines up, and
It
that
does.
it just came through for some of us at different times. But when we piece it all together, it makes more sense
Yeah.
to see, okay, well, this culture channeled this version of it, and then at some
That's
point
one of the primary things that's happening right now is the piecing together of all this, divergent information.
right.
And all these different cultures, all these different time periods, all that. It's all like blending together and, emerging as a completed puzzle.
Right.
Or partially completed puzzle.
Right.
Anyway,
And you can see how that would expand our consciousness as a collective,
absolutely.
which is, I think, the whole point in a lot of this stuff is it all comes together, and then we're able to integrate it, understand ourselves in a deeper way, and then and sort of start a new cycle, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, all right. So before we get into the dimensions, could you quickly go over what a keeper is for each of them?
Yeah. A keeper is the consciousness that grounds or anchors the resonance or the frequency of a particular dimension. So the dimensions proceed from most dense to highest vibrational. So the 1D is the heaviest, most dense. And then, it goes up and up and up until it gets to 9D, which is super high frequency. And, and the keepers are, what they do is they ground or anchor that energy in that particular dimension. So it stays autonomous,
Right.
And doesn't blend too much with the other dimensions, even though they blend, but they still have an autonomy at the same time.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's get started talking about the first dimension in the iron core center.
Yeah, that's considered 1D, and it's at it's the most dense, and it's the center of planetary cores. It's considered an iron core crystal. It's the only solid dimension, the only truly solid dimension on the vertical axis. So it's actually considered material,
Right.
fully material.
Right.
It's a hexagonal crystal, 1,500 miles wide, the center of the Earth. And that was verified back in, actually scientifically, back in 1994 when there was a 8.2 earthquake in Bolivia, and we just happened to have detectors on both sides of the globe, so we were able to actually finally measure the Earth's core. So we know less about the interior of the planet than we do the space around us.
Right.
Which is really interesting. Yeah, the interior of the planet, it's kind of like one of the next frontiers.
Right.
Actually, in science. So it's a repeated pattern of atoms, ions, and molecules in a crystalline structure. Super dense, packed with information. It said that the Akashic records manifest in the first dimension,
Right.
but all over the universe in different planetary systems.
Right.
So, yeah.
So each planet or star has their own core and their own first dimension.
Yes, 100%. And it's also said that to be fully grounded, whatever that means, whatever it means to be fully grounded, we have to vibrationally align with the frequency of the Earth's core. So maybe to, to ascend to the next level of consciousness, we have to be fully grounded,
Right.
Or we can't receive the information or the alchemy, whatever needs to occur to evolve.
Right.
So, speaking of the keepers, Gaia is the keeper of the first dimension. So we all know who Gaia is, or all of us who are into this. The divine feminine aspect of the planet, I suppose you would say. How would you define Gaia?
The mother energy. She's sort of birth form, right? All form starts with her, and and then we grow and birth things ourselves and reflect what our mother,
Yeah, she was like creator god in Greek mythology.
Yes.
Yeah, so she was one of the first primary deities.
Yes, I just read that myth not too long ago, and it was like she was so old, that we don't really know, where she came to be.
Originated.
Nobody knows because she is like one of the first. So
yeah, the core crystal also connects us to everything in the universe. Its agenda is gravity, so it actually provides the gravity that keeps everything grounded.
Right.
Essentially, its primary function is grounding information, encoding, and gravity. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now as an Akashic record reader, I'm able to access it all the time. It's been a wonderful relationship to establish, and I find that I read the records better when I feel grounded into the earth. So I'll do a visualization where I literally send my energy down. And this just makes me feel so supported, versus sending it up, I might feel flighty.
Yeah.
But when I send it down, I feel rooted, and then I feel like the information actually flows very clearly. So that's something I've been practicing lately. So.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. I mean, to evolve, and attuning to the Akashic records is definitely a catalyst for evolution, because you're taking in new information, which is expanding your consciousness, right? So you have to be grounded,
right?
Your feet on the core crystal, essentially, to really pull that off most effectively.
Right, to understand it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there anything else on the first dimension?
We
could talk a bit about how our blood has iron in it.
Yeah, definitely.
And so through our blood, we're actually connected
to
the earth that way. And so we kind of have a natural connection to it.
Yeah. The more we resonate with the heart of the earth, the more we open to the vast spaces within ourselves. And the blood is, the consistency or the constituents of the blood is what actually physically connects us with that.
Right.
Yeah. So. And
if you think about going and getting your blood, like a sample, and giving it, like there's so much information. Mm-hmm. They can tell you all this stuff about you, and like your organs and different things, your allergens and stuff, just by looking at the blood. So it almost makes sense that there would be a sort of intelligence within it, or 100%. A way to connect to something.
A resonance.
Right?
There's a resonance, and the hemoglobin, the iron in the blood, resonates with the core crystal.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't like to have my blood taken. I feel like my blood is supposed to stay in my body. So every time I have it during, taken, it just puts me into almost a state of shock.
Yes, I get bad anxiety. I get weak. I've actually fainted before, and it's not from the pain.
No, it's the vasovagal response. It's like you're on some level, that it's not supposed to be draining out of your body, even if it's for a medical procedure.
Right, and it feels invasive versus like if I cut myself on a limb and it bleeds that doesn't feel as invasive, but like to actually stick something in there and like try to
intentionally drain it out.
Right. Yeah, it does feel a little odd for sure, but sometimes we have to, but So let's talk a little bit about the second dimension and the intelligence of viruses, bacteria, and minerals.
Yeah, well, they're the actual the elementals. What you just described there, each one of those things is an elemental, and they're the keepers of the second dimension. So they ground the second dimension. The second dimension exists between the core crystal and the surface of the earth. So everything in between, like throughout the what's it called, the mantle, the the into the more molten layers, and there's so much going on in there. It's remarkable, and it's known as the in the esoteric world, it's known as the telluric realm. Yeah. Um, the crystals and minerals and bacteria and viruses, etc., in our bodies are actually symbiotic with the two-dimensional elementals of the same type. So that's the connection between us and the second dimension, is all the things that are in our bodies, the lower level consciousnesses that comprise our bodies. So our blood is 2D crystalline realm, physically and energetically alive as a flowing multi-dimensional connector, pulsing with the iron core crystal like a great river system of flowing energy. That's a quote from the book, which I thought was really apt for the second dimension. Have you ever been in a underground cave system?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it actually gives me anxiety a little bit.
Oh my gosh. I did the last time I went underground, it was at Ruby Falls in Chattanooga. And I actually did a pretty significant dose of psilocybin. And you talk about being paranoid. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the anxiety of that was tremendous. I think it was because you were, immersed in this realm of consciousness that you're not used to.
Right.
I mean, you're used to being on the surface, and when you go underground, it's like this. It's almost like an alien world in many ways, and the number of consciousnesses that are interacting with you, even whether you're conscious or unconscious of it, is really vast, and it can be very disorienting, and that's probably what causes the anxiety.
Right.
For a lot of people when they go underground.
I feel like caves are very symbolic. If you think about some of the Eleusinian mysteries, there's like going into the cave and descending. And then I was watching this documentary on the Mayan culture, and it was talking about one of their ceremonies, and it showed a picture of this place where they would basically go in and pretty much fully be underground. And there was like this tree that was springing up, and they would have their ceremony under, and then they would rise above towards the end. Which sounded a little bit like the Eleusinian mysteries a little bit too.
Shows how consciousness evolves from 2D
and going
to 3D.
into the earth and then rising out of the earth and sort of like actively trying to establish that relationship, I think, to the inner earth.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's like wisdom there.
100%.
But yeah, we all get a little nervous, I think.
Yeah, big time. That's one of the first places I ever experienced total darkness or total blackness, was inside a cave system. We went down, we were doing a tour, and then they turned the lights out at the bottom. And it was amazing what was just visually there in the dark.
Right.
All kinds of geometry. It was amazing.
Yes.
So it just shows you, how much is actually resonating in the interior of the earth.
Right, and that there's things going on in the darkness. It's
absolutely,
not
100%.
It's not just dark, like you can see all sorts. So when I was studying like vitality globules, and they would talk about how it's kind of they're coming from the sun. It's interesting. So I see them more during the day, but I would also see them when it's pitch black. I'll actually see what looks as though like glitter kind of moving, and they move slower in the darkness, where in the sun, when I see them, they move really fast.
They're more highly energized.
But when the light's just like normal room lighting, I don't notice them. But I notice them when it's bright and when it's completely dark.
Yeah.
So they're definitely still there, I feel like.
Yeah, I think the ancient peoples, there's all these tunnel systems, and in Europe there are tunnel systems from Scotland all the way down to Greece, vast arrays of tunnel systems. And then there are all these caverns that, are acoustically sophisticated. The ancient people were doing a lot of stuff underground.
Right. It's like they knew
Yeah.
what was going on.
They did. 100%.
And like and they did it in this harmonious way to where they could actually, create like systems and it would be sustainable. They could go down there and it not like close in on them. But it makes me think a little bit about with the Lord of the Rings, like some of the dwarfs and how when they were mining, they had like this relationship, like they knew where to go. And I think that the ancients had that same kind of access of like knowing where to mine and where to dig.
Absolutely.
That wasn't harming the earth. So I think it's really important when we think about the second dimension, like she was talking about like fracking and things like that. And, we have like this surplus of like earthquakes and things like that, which is actually the result because everything that happens in the second dimension gets reflected in the third dimension. So when we frack and disturb the second dimension, then it might result in an earthquake. So
it's an exploitation of the energetic of the telluric realm.
Right.
When we frack and when we mine, particularly with the oil, because the oil is a really essential component of the telluric realm, and we're just draining it out of the interior of the planet for our own use. So it's a real exploitation
in a mindless way.
Yeah, 100%.
Someone had asked her about like crystals. So when we mine for crystals, does this create disharmony in the telluric realm? And she was like, she doesn't think so. She actually thinks it brings them up so it makes us more conscious of that realm. But she said that it is about doing it in a certain way. So you wouldn't want to like mine all of it, but like having little bits that you're bringing up here and there is good because it helps us connect with that realm and be more mindful of it. But if you're just trying to harvest everything and just suck the earth completely dry for your own profit or whatever, then probably not such a great
It's
thing.
the difference between it's an analogy would be like hunting animals for food,
right,
and then hunting for sport,
right, and just leaving it laying there.
Yeah, sure,
for sure.
Yeah, well, for our listeners, if you're interested in the tunnel systems across Europe, they're called Erdstalls, Erdstals. Be something interesting to Google. And there's a great underground city in Turkey called Derinkuyu, Derinkuyu. So look that up and check that out. It's super sophisticated underground city in Turkey that the ancients, and no one knows how it was made. The materials that were removed from the underground spot are nowhere to be found. Mm-hmm. So it's another one of those mysteries like the megaliths from ancient times that is not really understood.
Right.
So it's fascinating, and a lot of people believe that it was a shelter. Ancient people used it as a shelter during the last cataclysm, the Younger Dryas cataclysm.
Right.
So we
right.
went
People
underground
went into the earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild, that our ancestors had their own science, and it really. We think that we're so evolved. I do think that we know quite a bit, but I think that they did too. And I think we're kind of playing catch up in some ways to try to figure out how the heck did they do this? There must have been like formulas and tools and things, but
their science was, it was more based on the feminine end of the polarity spectrum, and ours is more on the masculine end.
Right. So we were like analyzing it, where they were like channeling it. I think they were more in tune with like the hierarchy and the spiritual realm. I think that they were basically given some of that information.
It was spiritual science as opposed to like,
and now we're trying to analyze it, but we're taking the spirit
science
out, and so it's harder for us to understand what the heck did they do, because we're overthinking it, I think, sometimes,
Yeah,
and we've lost connection to spirit more than ever.
Yeah. The Theosophists say that the goal of the fifth root race, which is what we're a part of right now, is to develop the rational mind. So we've done that. We've done it to a very high level, apparently, and it's time for us to get back in tune with, what the ancient people understood.
Right.
The feminine principle and the intuitive mind, and going within. So
right.
Yeah.
There was another thing too, like that she had channeled this like different type of chakra system, where the iron core crystal being sort of at the feet. And then you would imagine like this triangle that goes from like the sacral and the root. And so the triangle is pointing down towards the iron core crystal center. And then the telluric realm would be like
Around
in
the knees.
between.
Around
Yes.
the knees. Yeah.
So the rest of the chakras sort of make
Start with
sense.
Muladhara and go up toward the higher dimensions.
Right. So I think,
It's interesting.
just meditating on this triangle pointed down can actually help us to channel that energy back up
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. She also says that, for true healing of the physical body to occur, you have to align with the frequency of the telluric realm.
Yes.
So.
Yes, she was saying that like we could heal anything if we can basically slow our frequency down to match that. That's where all healing occurs. And I think this is where you have all this wild stuff with crystal healing and things like that, and it's because the crystals are actually operating.
The crystals help us, they're aids in helping
Right.
us slow down to their frequency.
Right. But we're doing the work.
Yeah.
So there was, this point where she doesn't really love the Catholic Church, but she thinks that they intentionally disconnected humans from the first two dimensions. She said that before the Catholic Church came in, that all of these indigenous cultures were taught how to connect this way, but that at some point in our history, people intentionally wanted to sort of demonize the telluric realm, and this is when we lost our connection, and then we needed their medicines, and we needed them for information and spiritual guidance, where beforehand we were all tuned into the Akashic and we were just channeling it, and we were healing ourselves, and we were connected.
They literally built all their churches and cathedrals on sacred sites.
Yeah.
To cover them up.
I know.
To prevent connection to them in the ancient way.
I know. I just was, when I was watching this Mayan documentary, watched, and like it showed this church where they had defiled the sacred site and literally like put the church on top of it. So like the base is still the megalith, and then their church is right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know. It like made me really angry.
Yeah, I like to think that it was, it was done unconsciously, but I don't believe that. I think it was done. In a lot of cases, it was done consciously to actually disconnect humanity from that realm.
So when we learn about things like the dimensions, especially how we relate to them, it actually can, I feel like, heal us, and because it reconnects us, to our source and to all these dimensions, which are they're there for us to connect to, But it's almost like we've been limited on purpose, to not access them. But I don't know. That's a whole conspiracy thing that she gets into that we don't have to today.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in the book if you want to read the book. So.
Yes, for sure. For sure. All right. Let's get into the third dimension, which is all about linear time and space.
Yeah, so this is the one we know the most about because we're completely immersed in it on a daily basis. Humanity are the keepers of three-dimensional reality. Yeah,
feels important.
It does. Third dimensional reality is where we learn to manipulate time and space through our physical bodies, right? We experience reality physically, and it's the only time. Well, the first three realms, but as far as human consciousness goes, it's the only time that we actually experience things in what's called the world of form or material reality or three-dimensional reality. Our bodies have gotten over time kind of been out of shape by the physical, emotional, and mental stress of experiencing physical reality. And what happens is when that happens, I mean, most of us have got like aches and pains in our bodies and certain difficulties within the system. And, those are ultimately spiritual blocks, but they manifest physically. this is probably a good time to talk about the difference between duality and non-duality and the philosophical systems that have evolved around that. Humanity, typically as far as spirituality is concerned, have taken like two different courses and opposing courses. One would be duality, which would say that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, right? And like that, to get back to our spiritual nature, we have to overcome the limitations of our lower natures, that which is attuned to the physical dimension or the world of form. And then there's on the opposite end of that spectrum is the more non-dualistic philosophies, like tantric yoga, for example, is a non-dualistic philosophy. And the idea behind that is to fully embrace the physical realm. And the physical realm is just a manifestation of the spiritual realm.
Right.
Right. So it's viewed differently. So it's not considered, the lower nature is not considered sinful. It's not considered, wrong in any way to embrace what the physical realm provides for us, or the connection that we have to it.
Right.
So that's the difference between being an ascetic or renunciate yogi and a tantric yogi who practices posture and, embraces the physical body.
Right.
Yeah.
And wants to be here and be present. And
yeah. It makes a big difference, for your life. I mean, if you're gonna be, there's a lot of conflict there, because a lot of the religions, Christianity teaches that, like, we have sinful natures, and everybody's always conflicted about, is what they're feeling and what they want to experience. Is that wrong? Or, but, I mean, we're here to experience physical reality.
Right.
In all of its manifestations, and all of its difficulty, and it's just it teaches us so much going through these things, and if we're conflicted about it, we can never fully immerse into it, so we don't get the teachings in the same way because of that.
Right.
So to really benefit the most from it, we have to fully immerse into it and accept it as part of our nature.
Right. One of my favorite things about Sikhism is, it's a newer religion. So it's more of the Aquarian age, where some of these other religions are Piscean.
Yeah.
And Guru Nanak did not expect his, devotees to be ascetics. He wanted them to have families and to literally be present and be here. Still there's, ethics and compassion and, loyalty, but he wanted them to get married and to because how can you teach or relate to other people if you're putting yourself in this whole other realm? Right. Yeah. So he actually believed that that was the future, right? That as we moved more into the Aquarian age, that we didn't have to practice that asceticism anymore, which I think is really cool, because we don't have a lot of these new religions, right, that are evolving with humanity like that. So some of them are still kind of dated,
They are 100%.
And they keep us feeling bad about our bodies and, wanting to hit ourselves and, and
guilt is one of the one of the lowest frequency emotions.
Yeah.
So it keeps us held back into a denser state of consciousness.
Right. And shame. And a lot of the religions do focus on that, and maybe they don't focus on it, but I think people naturally hear that and they might feel ashamed and they feel like, I need to just give up everything, right? That it's all about balance, and knowing what makes you feel good and what's healthy, and bringing in more of that. So with the third dimension, I felt like the most important thing for me that I learned from the book was when she talked about the 4 directions.
Yeah.
And how important that they are.
Yeah, she goes into that quite a bit. She is a Native American. Her grandfather was a Native American shaman,
Right. He was part Cherokee and then
Yeah.
also had the Celtic background.
Yeah. So, yeah, let me just read a little thing that she wrote about that, which it has to do, it centers around creating a practice or meditation space in our homes. So it's important that the space be neat, uncluttered, so it's resonating as a higher frequency as possible. And then you need an altar dedicated to your highest ideals and those who inspire you. So that is the thing that anchors you toward the higher dimensions, right?
Yeah. So you see the altar physically in front of you, but it's connecting you to the other dimensions.
Absolutely. So it's personalized, it's decorated with meaningful objects, paintings, photographs, whatever. And then it has to be oriented properly. And that's where the four directions come in. Ideally, you would like to orient in such a way that the first four directions are the cardinal points. You'd like to face east with west at your back, north to your left, and south to your right. Positioning yourself in this way aligns you with the movement positioning of the earth in space and time and forms a deeper connection with the natural cycles that are inherent in nature. The fifth direction is straight down towards the Earth's core, so that would be the vertical axis. That would align with the vertical axis. And the sixth is directly overhead towards the sky and deep space. So the fifth and sixth are, the two directions of the vertical axis. And then the seventh would be your heart space, so the core of your being, so your heart chakra, your anahata. Yeah. So orienting yourself in space in this way is it's considered a sacred act of intention that creates resonance with all that is divine within you and around you. Yeah. So the Native Americans, I mean, they were highly attuned to the importance of that, and they would, align their villages and their living structures and all that with the four directions.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was considered, it was a sacred spiritual practice, but it was also like completely immersed in their day-to-day lives, so.
Right. I think about it as like, where are you? Right. So when we're feeling ungrounded, because she said that, humanity is really like shifting to where the fourth dimension is becoming a lot more accessible, and that some people are kind of losing touch with their third dimensional nature. But she said now it's more important than ever to be grounded in the third dimension, because there's a lot going on in the fourth dimension that's actually separating us, but we are the keepers of the earth. So today I was outside laying in the sun, like facing the sun as it was rising. And I noticed, okay, it's been overcast, and I haven't seen the sun, I haven't really made space to go outside and meditate with the sun. But as it's rising, I realized, it rises, in the east, that's in the west. So I'm like, when we know where we are, so we're like, where are you? Well, you're facing east, right? So you like know where your position is. And I feel like it grounds you more to know which direction am I facing?
Absolutely.
Where am I going? So I don't know. I feel like it's almost like a little meditation. It's like when I feel ungrounded, I'm like, where's the sun? And where am I in relation to that?
Yeah, it reconnects you with the natural cycles. That's one of the best ways to do it, and for the past, I don't know, 500 years of society, we have done everything we can to disconnect from that.
Right.
Like clocks, lights, the Gregorian calendar, all those things have disconnected us from the natural rhythms and cycles of three-dimensional reality. So, I think that's why there are so many people that are, attuned with getting back to nature and spending time in nature and, hiking and camping and all this stuff. So you start to, realign your consciousness with the foundation of three-dimensional reality. In that way.
And appreciate it. Because I think so many of us dissociate, and we're worried. And so when we talk about the fourth dimension, we'll definitely get into this, because I think that's where we go when we dissociate and when we're trying to escape. So something in the physical world is uncomfortable and we don't want to deal with it. So we might even, take substances that make us dissociate, or drink that fogs our vision or whatever. Because it's like, I feel like for some of us, it's hard to be here, because there's just a lot going on. We feel helpless. But I think the the point is to feel so connected to the earth that you almost find pleasure being here again, you know?
That's
So,
one of the reasons it's hard to be here is because we've lost connection to that.
right.
You know,
But the more you can't, the more you swim in the lake, the more you start, I think it like reawakening, you know?
that's why entheogens are such a great way of healing mental health problems because they reconnect you
Right.
with the fundamental aspects of nature and
Right.
even down into the telluric realm.
Oh,
you know?
definitely.
Yeah. So
Yes, I was thinking earlier about, some of the plant medicines and stuff and how I think that certain ones basically connect you to all the dimensions at once, and that's what people they see spirals, they're connected to elementals, they're receiving information, they're hearing music of the spheres. Well, it's because it's like opening you up
yeah,
to all of it. But that could be like sensory overload to somebody, that
could.
isn't prepped for that. So this is why I think working with a shaman and stuff like that, especially your first time, so that you can prepare the body and the mind and that you can get the most from the experience and not just get caught up in, oh, I'm on a trip, right? But like, what am I really
actually experiencing?
receiving? And
Yeah.
what can I bring
Yeah.
back with me?
Yeah.
Because I think once you're connected to all the dimensions, it becomes a little bit easier to realize when you're in them. Because so that's why I think I'm not like, oh, go do a bunch of acid, but there's something about like seeing it and feeling it. And then when you go and meditate now and you're experiencing the same thing, you're like, oh, okay. This is the, what I experienced. But
once
we have
you've
that,
been there through the plant medicine, then you can get back to that same space without the plant medicine.
right. You don't actually need it anymore. It's sort of just like the catalyst, I think. And I think some people, based on past lives and things like that, they don't even need it at all, because they've already taken initiations and they've already experienced it. But I think for some people, that it actually is very mind opening and also roots them into their body, so.
Yeah, it also takes you far outside your normal, which is really important for, a lot of people that are, beginning the path of, the internal immersion into self, I mean, because, we're so like lost in our day to day and doing the same thing in a routine kind of way over and over and over again, and the entheogens just like bust you out of that. And you don't have any choice but to go with it.
Right. And they like create new pathways in the brain so that change can actually happen.
100%. Yeah.
And you don't even have to take like a large amount. I've noticed people, just microdosing, mushrooms pretty regularly. They're not tripping or anything like that, but they are able to get past mental blocks that they've had for years, open up new like creative things where they're like now painting and, it's like there's something about it. Like we just get stuck and we need something to sort of shake it up and unlock it, I think.
It creates a neuroplasticity that, connects different parts of the brain together so that, perception actually changes when that happens, so you actually perceive your day to day differently after you've experienced that. So.
Right. Yeah. I think we're finally, in the 60s when all of this stuff came about, it's like, yeah, man, hippie stuff, but now like it's becoming a little bit more grounded to where it's not just hippie stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, sure. But it's like there's science here. It's actually doing something. It's, it doesn't have to be something that I think when people abuse it and treat it like, drugs.
Recreational drug, yeah.
That they turn a lot of people off from it. But I think finally enough people are talking about it to where they're like, there's something here with these microdoses. There's something to taking these vision quests with a shaman that...
It's really important for it to be done ceremonially because that gives a reverence to the experience. It makes it a sacred act instead of just, a mindless recreational, experience.
Right.
Yeah. So if you can get to the point where you're looking at it that way, then it can really create dramatic change in your life. No doubt.
For sure. Can you share a bit about the fourth dimension and how it relates to the collective unconscious?
Yeah. So yeah, 4D is one of my favorite realms because it's the realm of myths and archetypes.
Yes.
Yeah. So anybody who loves Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and The Matrix and Chronicles of Narnia and Harry Potter, all that stuff, those are all rooted in the fourth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Because archetypes holds they hold the memory of human events throughout time and going back through thousands of years. So we're at a point at human evolution where we're becoming more highly conscious of 4D, and a lot of that is coming through in like creative things like what Tolkien and Lucas and all these people were able to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
So the Anunnaki are actually the keepers of fourth dimension. And the Anunnaki are actually, it makes sense because they're very archetypal,
Right.
and Lil and Inky, are the
Right, the like Sumerian,
the Sumerian
Akkadian.
gods. Yeah, that's where the foundation of post-Diluvian human civilization occurred.
Right.
Was with the the Sumerian culture, and they were highly, highly. It's really interesting that it's like the human culture emerged back out of the fourth dimension into the third dimension after the global cataclysm. It's just kind of fascinating in that way through the Anunnaki. Another interesting thing is people who've studied Jungian psychology and astrology and tarot and things of that nature have begun to, whether they're consciously aware of it or not, tap into fourth dimensional awareness
Right.
through those symbols and archetypes. Jung was huge on that. The collective unconscious, and the collective unconscious is the realm of archetypes.
Right.
So,
Right. And we're all connected to them through the collective unconscious, but we experience them, differently based on our own lens and like the way that we've encountered these different archetypes. So they're going to resonate differently for each person, but they're all there. Like we all know the hero. Like you say the hero, and then 10 things pop into your head.
Yeah, Frodo Baggins, Bilbo Baggins, Luke Skywalker,
Right.
Neo from The Matrix, Harry Potter. Yeah, the mother. I mean, that resonates deeply with everyone.
Right.
The fool, the jester.
I've been tapping straight into this. I've been working with the Akashic Records, channeling poems, which are really more like they come out sounding like the Canterbury Tales. Really, is what it ends up being. Not as poetic as I thought it might be. But me and the records are writing a book of poetry on archetypes. And it has been so cool. I literally sit down, open the records. I say, "Can we write today?" And they say yes. And I just start I write it in like 10 minutes and this poem comes out.
Wow.
And it's coming straight from this fourth dimension, I feel like, where, the records are also in this dimension, but they're like helping me connect with the fourth dimension in a way that I haven't before. So I've studied it like analytically, but when I'm writing these archetypal poems, it's like literally coming straight through this dimension.
Yeah.
Which is it's been kind of fun,
Yeah. And with science, the discovery of the quantum realm is, our scientific connection to the fourth dimension, because that's where everything kind of begins to emerge into physical reality. So it kind of coalesces down through fourth dimensional archetypes into the quantum realm, and takes physical form after that. So like an archetype is like a prototype it's like a perfected state of a physical thing that manifests later.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like you said, the poetry that came through there. It's a realm of inspiration and creativity, and it's a lot of the most beautiful art and poetry and stories that have come through humanity have their foundation in the fourth dimensional reality.
Right. Because we all have the ability to access these dimensions all the time. And the second and the fourth, because we're kind of sandwiched in between those two, I think are the easiest for us to process and understand because they're so close to our own dimension. But I thought it was interesting when she talks about 4D, how she said it has about 30 levels. So that's what she's seeing. And she's saying that a lot of us are accessing the lowest level. And she said that in this, there's the low astral hue, and this can be where possessions can occur, dark energies can grab people's consciousness, and so forth. So she's like trying to teach you to access the higher levels of 4D because it is within these lower fourth dimensional frequencies that we are getting sucked into these like mind traps and like the psyops and
intentional manipulation through the
right.
media, and religious systems and
right. She
yeah.
said like this is where becoming an adept comes in, being able to discern what you're actually the information you're getting. Where is this coming from? What's the intention behind it? And like the more evolved you get, the more comfortable you get in this dimension, the more you're like, wow, this is lower because it's going to have fear. It's going to have, like you're going to get anxiety and stuff. So when you're in your head and you're in anxiety mode, you're in the lower fourth dimension.
Absolutely.
But I actually think I'm really good at this. My name is Astral Meadow, right? I've spent a lot of time in this astral plane. Yeah. And like over the course of time, I've kind of mapped out ways to get to these different levels of it. So like, I don't ever see like the lower frequency beings, like people talk about cryptids and things like that. I just don't deal with them. Like when I'm in the records, they don't come up, and I think it's, when I was little, I would have like bad dreams and I was scared of like these darker beings. But over time, like I just feel like I go straight to the top now. I have my own place there that I go and spend my time in. But it can feel almost like a mind trap, I think, if you're not fully prepared. And they don't, I think they, like the global leader, whoever they might be, want us to kind of get in these little traps where we're circling through the same thing over and over again and not really expanding, and we can kind of get
stuck in a karmic loop essentially.
Right. And when she talks about, the fourth dimension being like the person on the table, and then 4D is like a canopy over us, and all the other dimensions come through this dimension for us, or all the higher ones. So the lower ones we would connect to beneath us. So this canopy, though, which is the 4D, can actually prevent us from fully accessing the higher realms if we get stuck here.
Yeah.
So it's actually important to sort of master the mind, to master the thoughts, to study the collective unconscious and things like that.
Yeah, and you can also, create a protective grid around you with the Merkaba. When you're traveling, through fourth dimensional reality. And that's important too, because it allows you to progress to the higher dimensions without being overly influenced by the higher levels in fourth dimensional reality without being overly influenced by the lower ones.
Let's go into the fifth dimension, which is all about harmonizing our minds and opening our hearts.
Yeah, so it's a realm of light, but it's also, light through the heart. Love. The love is the interconnecting medium, that which binds all things together. So it forms the foundation of the idea of oneness, in physical reality. Yeah, the keepers of 5D are the Pleiadians, actually, and that's, this book, the Alchemy of the Nine Dimensions was channeled from the Pleiadians through Barbara Hand Clow, and we didn't talk about that, but they're the ones that are providing us with all this information.
Right.
It's not her, but she's channeling the Pleiadians because they're trying to get a message across to to humanity.
And because they operate from this love center,
Yeah.
like they actually love us and have been working with humanity. I think she said the past like 100,000 years.
Yeah, long time.
So.
Yeah. It's a realm of light that centers in the human heart, so the Anahata chakra, and resonates with Earth's biological creatures and plants. So you know that when you feel a love for nature, that you're attuning through the heart to fifth dimensional reality. And that's why there's so many people that are, like as we talked about earlier, getting back to, hiking and camping and actually being out in nature and away from culture, away from society, and reconnecting with a natural world. And
Yes.
because that's a gateway to fifth dimensional reality. Yeah. Another interesting thing, another way to do that is through labyrinths. Yeah, they're particularly the labyrinths on sacred sites. So walking through those is a way to access the fifth dimensional reality through geometry, fifth dimensional and higher dimensions through geometry. So apparently there was a time, in the ancient past when labyrinths were all over the world, and that was a way of, actually accessing the higher dimensions. And it's really interesting because I think that the idea that Robert Edward Grant is getting across about drawing sacred geometry is a way of kind of like walking through. It's a similar phenomenon to walking through a labyrinth.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. It's a very grounded three-dimensional way of accessing the higher dimensions. Really, really interesting. So samadhi would be a manifestation of the fifth dimensional reality. So samadhi is the goal of the practice of yoga. It's considered liberation or moksha. So when you actually get to that stage of consciousness, you've unified with fifth dimensional reality at that point.
I thought it was interesting when she was talking about, Pleiadians, because she has to explain this, right? And it's like these ancient cultures, they say that we're from the Pleiades, but she was saying it can be even more simple than that in understanding of anytime we're operating from our heart space, that we are Pleiadian. So as we access these higher dimensions and we shift back and forth through them, like when we're operating from love, we are Pleiadian.
Interesting.
Right? So it's almost like it's a dimension, but it's also like this frequency that we can actively participate in. And I think humanity is headed this way.
100%.
And we're moving through that fourth dimension, and some people I think are kind of getting stuck there. But that's why we're sharing information like this. And I think a lot of the energy work and stuff like this is helping people get that heart center open. And it's, I feel like, going to help them access all the other higher dimensions and not get so stuck in the 40.
Yeah. Yeah. The Heart Math Institute is a really good source of understanding about heart dynamics. Apparently the human heart has a larger magnetic field than the brain. So it's it's a brain in and of itself, but it's a different type of brain.
Right. Similar to like the gut is also,
Yeah.
it has its own intelligence.
It does. It's a powerful force. And it's the as far as the chakra system goes, it's the point in between the higher chakras and lower chakras. So it's where they meet. So you could look at it the same way with the dimensions. The dimensional realms. The really high ones and the lower ones meet. At the fifth or the heart.
Right.
So
I thought it was interesting too when she would talk about the Pleiadians and call them spicy, and that they are actually very much into like sexuality and how important it is for humans, to have like these conscious orgasms, which she said turns the galactic center. So it's like this love dynamic, like when we're making love in a conscious way, that we're actually like, tuning into these higher dimensions, and that it's actually really important. So she was like, I'm very mindful now what I think about when I'm, doing this, because I realize that it's like having these ripple effects out, like, because we're all interconnected, so what we focus on is really important, and keeping ourselves in that love vibration is really important.
Yeah.
It unites us. I
Yeah,
think,
so
with
the experience
everything.
of orgasm, I mean, orgasm would be probably the most high frequency experience that we can have
Right.
in three-dimensional reality. So if that's done through the heart, then
Right.
that's going to make it even more, resonant with our higher selves than it would be if it was, done through a lower frequency, through recreation or
Right.
sport or whatever.
So when we're
Yeah.
consciously loving either ourselves or another person, this is one of the ways that we access the fifth dimension,
100%.
which is
Yeah.
kind of cool to see, like,
Yeah.
how do we do this? Well, that's one of the ways. There's other ways too, compassion
Yeah.
and care and things like that. Loving the earth and all of that is also how we can connect to that dimension. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting when she said this turns the like galactic wheel or whatever. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was this important, right?
Yeah, well, that's a manifestation of the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, right? So
Right.
whatever elevates you is going
Right.
to elevate the whole as a
Right.
result, the higher
This
dimensions.
this also is interesting because we were just talking about like the aesthetics and things like that. Like, if orgasms are this important, right? That it may be, I've listened to a couple podcasts recently, and it's all about like these guys not, releasing their seeds and stuff like that, and they're like whole semen retention. And but it's like, it seems as though when
That's
I was
the
reading this that like orgasms are actually kind of important. Maybe being mindful of them though,
Yeah.
right? And not just releasing it all the time, because there is energy here. So you might get drained. But I just don't know if like fully not, I don't know if semen retention is like the way, right?
Yeah, well, it's the it's non-dualism. I mean, it's dualism. It's a dualistic
Right.
philosophy of asceticism and renunciation.
Right.
Yeah. So it essentially stems from the belief that the sexual act is lower nature,
Right.
and it doesn't have to be.
Right. It doesn't have to be. And
Yeah.
I actually thought that this was nice to read after hearing all these people kind of talking about how it's like we shouldn't experience any of this and all. And I'm like, I just don't think that I would have chose to be human, if I didn't want to experience all the fun parts about being human. But of course, I do recognize that some of these things can attract us to really negative people, and we can bring lots of drama, so it definitely has the potential to go into that lower nature, but I don't think it has to, and I think that's
Yeah.
what we're kind of learning right now.
Yeah, you have to be very highly conscious of what you're doing, and the problem is that most people, the majority of humanity, is probably not.
Right.
So it tends to be more of a low frequency activity,
Right.
but the potential for it to be a high frequency activity is very high.
Right.
But you've got to start the inward journey before you can get to that. You have to do a lot of interpersonal exploration and attune with your your higher self before you
Right.
can get to that
Right.
point of love. Because sex is extremely powerful, and it can definitely throw you off your axis.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
easily.
So it's, being more mindful for sure. All right. Can you explain the sixth dimension and how it connects us to sacred geometry?
Yeah. It's the realm of sacred geometry and Platonia, which would relate to the Platonic solids and the morphic fields. So Platonia is the eternal 6D land of geometric configurations. interestingly, she describes it as being permeated in mists. I don't know what that means, but it makes me think of the mists of Avalon.
Yes,
You know,
yes. I just recommended that book to someone last week.
you're interesting. Yeah, yeah. So it replicates in 3D as plants, animals, humans, material objects through electromagnetic frequencies that move through 5D and split in 4D to become visible in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So crop circles would be a manifestation of six-dimensional reality
Mm-hmm.
and direct manifestation of six-dimensional reality in three-dimensional reality. But everything, every material object in physical reality has a geometry to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it in that way it resonates with 6D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the keepers of 6D are the Syrians.
Mm-hmm.
So the Syrian system. Sirius is it's a trinary star system, approximately 8.7 light years from Earth, and there are people who believe that we exist in a binary relationship
Mm-hmm.
with Sirius because Sirius was very fundamental to the ancient people. A lot of the ancient calendar systems were based on the heliacal rising of Sirius.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the ancient monuments were built in alignment with Sirius. Uh, it's also known as the dog star. And what's really another interesting topic about Sirius is the Dogon tribe
Mm-hmm.
in Africa has all this mythology based around. See, I mean, they know about the star. I mean, they're a primitive
Right.
culture. You know, they're like a Stone Age culture, but they have all this information about the star system.
Right. Well, I feel like
Sirius,
it's
you know.
just like how the Cherokee, are connected to the Pleiadians. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's the Dogons. When she was talking about, she said the Dogons and the Egyptians are connected to Sirius.
Yeah, that's
But you'll see the geometry in the pyramid. You see why are they Syrian? It's because I feel like it's because they were channeling the geometry for us, right? So we can look at these ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics and things like that, and that we can see the geometry, right? So it almost makes sense that these cultures are Syrian
mm-hmm.
because they are straight channeling geometry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They are, and another aspect of geometry is what's known as sacred geometry,
Mm-hmm.
and that is based on what's called the golden ratio. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a perfectly symmetrical relationship between two proportions, where the relationship between the larger and the smaller part is the same as that between the whole and the larger part. So it's like this perfect proportional
Mm-hmm.
relationships that occur in nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on the Greek letter phi, phi, which is 1.618. Not to be confused with pi, which is 3.1457 or 3.1459. Yeah, the golden ratio is another example of the Hermetic principle of correspondence, the second Hermetic principle of correspondence. It's found in nature. So the golden ratio in the what are called the Fibonacci sequences. The Fibonacci sequence can be found throughout the natural world. So shells, crystals are great examples of this. Flowers, seed cones, spiral galaxies. You see it manifesting over and over and over. But it's
Mm-hmm.
this perfect relationship between the smaller and the larger parts.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it also manifests in humans and animals, like our hands, like the digits in our fingers,
Right.
are proportionally, aligned with the golden ratio. Yeah. So, the Syrians were, like we said earlier, were like a really integral part of many of the ancient cultures,
Mm-hmm.
and their connection to the higher realms was through Sirius, and
Right.
they based their lunar calendar systems on the heliacal rising of Sirius, and it allowed them to be very highly, like we talked about earlier, very highly attuned to the natural cycles,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as opposed to the Gregorian calendar, which is completely misaligned with the natural cycles.
Yeah, it's a mess. So a way, I think that we can connect to the sixth dimension would be through like mandalas and just really sitting and meditating on sacred geometry. And the thing is like if you meditate on a mandala, it kind of starts morphing.
Yeah, that's a big part of Jung's teachings.
Right. And like you actually, it almost feels like a portal or something. Like you're literally having now an experience just looking at these perfectly aligned shapes. Mm-hmm. And there's something about it. And it's like our consciousness just takes off. So yeah, that's one of the ways I think that we can access this dimension, and that we probably do all the time, just passing. Because I think sacred geometry is re-emerging. It used to be like, you think of like Islam and things like that. Their mosques are full of sacred geometry. You look up and like the whole thing. So I think that they were very tuned in to this, and our ancestors were, and they put it in all the art.
Oh yeah.
But it's coming back, and a lot of it is these hippie artists. They're taking this plant medicine and painting, and it's the same stuff that they were painting on these, sacred places.
Yeah, you see the flower of life emerging over and over in, ancient art and
all over the world.
Yeah, yeah.
All over
different
the world.
times, different cultures, different eras, it's part of the collective unconscious.
Right. And when a lot of these people doing different kinds of plant medicine, so the Egyptians, it's like the blue lotus flower or whatever, all of these plants activate that part, and you are always connecting into the sacred geometry. So why are they all seeing it? It's because they all had different plant medicine ceremonies that they would do, where I think that they were drawing it to themselves, and then they were creating the art out of those experiences.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. Same with the Eleusinian mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we just don't really have anything, like that now. I mean, I think we are kind of creating our own rituals now based on people sharing their experiences and things, and everyone's trying different things. And I do think that we have all the information that we need. So as long as, like, if we're seeking it, we'll figure it out. There's something about asking the questions and intentionally looking for answers that it sort of just shows up. So maybe, you're just drawing an image and you realize, oh, wow, this feels similar to the way I feel when I look at sacred geometry. But like, I'm doing this, right? Yeah. This is coming from my own hand. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking,
from a deeper layer of your consciousness.
I channel the 60 all the time because I'm an artist, right? Mm-hmm. So every time I draw the human form, I'm basically channeling the sixth dimension into my art, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. There's a really cool, interestingly, Walt Disney video featuring Donald Duck that goes into the explanation of geometry and sacred geometry. And it does it. It's really well done, very sophisticated. It starts back in Greek culture and goes forward, and it's good. It shows you that Walt Disney was really attuned to a lot of these esoteric sciences,
right?
And he was trying to get it across in many of the movies and things that he was producing. So
right, I think that Walt Disney was a Mason, and the Masons are highly tuned into this realm because what is Masonry? It's like molding form, right, to create these new shapes, and they're like the master masons. They know how to do that. They know how to.
They created the cathedrals,
right? That's where all this architecture is coming from, and so.
I mean, you could say that the cathedrals are the most impressive thing that's ever been created by humanity,
right?
And it was a continuation of the sciences that were brought about with the megalithic knowledge. Structures.
Yeah, it's been passed down.
Yeah, just incredible.
All right, let's talk a bit about the seventh dimension and the highways of light.
Yeah, so it's the 70 is sound and vibration. So it relates to the third hermetic principle of vibration, which says nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Mm-hmm. So 70 is a realm of cosmic vibration that generates the 6D geometric forms by vibrational resonance through the great 7D photon bands that structure the galaxy itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, within the photon bands, the 8D divine thought waves of light step down by octaves into the lower frequency 7D sound waves. The photon bands emerge from the galactic core and form the classic torus shape around the entire galaxy itself in conjunction with the vertical axis. So, yeah, I mean, this is like, once you get up to 7D, this is like really high frequency
Right.
reality.
It's not manifesting physically. It can manifest physically, but it has to move through the dimensions. So we're like, light creates sound and sound creates form, and then form is, filtered through the archetypal stuff, and then we get it, right? So by the time we get it, it's shifted quite a bit. But unless we're connecting straight directly to the seventh dimension.
Yeah.
Which would be the key to getting like the purest form of that energy.
Yeah, the music of the spheres, I think,
Yes.
is the pure form of seventh dimensional reality. Om would be another example, the primordial sound of creation itself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So the keepers of seventh dimension are from the Andromeda galaxy, which is the only galaxy in the known universe that's currently converging with the Milky Way. All the other galaxies are moving away from the Milky Way. So it's our sister galaxy, and we're actually coming together probably to form a larger whole, Apparently there's another... Earth has a twin planet in the Andromeda galaxy, apparently.
Yeah,
I don't know where I heard that, but I remember.
Yeah, she talks about this.
Does she talk about that?
Yeah, she calls it Ion, and
Yeah,
she said
that's
that
it. Yeah,
on
that's it.
Ion, the cataclysm didn't happen, and so that there's something about us connecting with them, like they can actually hold us in a certain way because they didn't experience the trauma, so they can support us.
So they evolved further.
Yes, because they don't have the trauma.
Yeah.
Because everybody's traumatized from that cataclysm.
Yeah.
I go into the records all the time, and I've went into my husband's records, and I'm like studying everybody sees the flood.
We have a collective amnesia
Right.
around it. Like it was so traumatic that we've chosen to forget it or
Right.
block it from our conscious minds.
It's like there's a fear there though that we have to ascend because, but this is where 5D is so important because love actually can help us transcend fear.
Yes.
So, but I feel like we're kind of all in the third dimension collectively being smothered by fear, right? And we don't even realize where the trauma comes from because, like you said, we've blocked it out.
Yeah, all that stuff's reemerging though with like the work of Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and all these people that are bringing back the understanding of this global catastrophe.
Right, and that there were definitely civilizations pre-Diluvian.
Yes.
Like that. Yes, Sumerian is ancient and old, but there were things before even that.
Yeah. Yeah, that gets back into the Atlantean and Lemurian root races and
Hyperborean, which came through the records the other day, which was interesting.
yeah. So we'll talk about that in another podcast sometime, the root races. But another manifestation in three-dimensional reality, seventh-dimensional reality, and this comes through sixth-dimensional reality, is a field of science called cymatics. Yeah, so if you put like sand or some type of... Well, it's usually done with sand,
right? Or salt, or something.
Yeah, salt, or on a metal plate, and you run these certain frequencies through it. It creates geometrical patterns just naturally. So it shows you how seventh dimensional reality creates three-dimensional reality.
Yeah,
the structure. It creates the structure of three-dimensional reality. Yeah, there's a guy named Michael Tellinger. He's a South African. In South Africa, there are all these these vast arrays of these rock structures that are they look incredibly ancient and primal. I mean, the weathering is really heavy on these things, but they're all sacred geometry, and he believes that they're like cymatic manifestations from the core of the earth up into physical reality, because they don't appear to be man-made.
Right.
They appear to be like just a direct manifestation of like the telluric realm or the core of the earth up to the surface. Yeah. So you can look, any of our listeners that are interested in that, you can look up the stone structures in South Africa and Michael Tellinger. Fascinating. Yeah. And those relate to, those are kind of like the opposite of crop circles, where crop circles are coming from the higher dimensional realms. These stone circles are coming from the lower dimensional realms and manifesting in three-dimensional reality.
So interesting. If you think about like sound coming from beneath, even like if it was like cymatics, but from the opposite direction coming from, so you think about like this earthquake or something making this big sound and like these things emerging, that's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. The earth actually has a resonance, it's called the Schumann frequency.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a very, very low frequency vibration, but it's its signature sound or signature vibration of the planet itself.
Right. Yeah. But that would definitely make sense when they say that everything in the third dimension starts in the second dimension. So as that it's a low frequency, it's moving slower, but there is form actually manifesting out of that dimension.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting.
Yeah, so Michael Tellinger would be your guy for research on that. A lot of the ancient cave systems and tunnel systems have like these really sophisticated vibrational resonance acoustic properties. So it was believed that the ancient people spent a lot of time, underground, like we talked about earlier, going through these sound ceremonies. And they did it underground because the resonance is higher.
Right, it's different.
Yeah. It's
I did go to a concert in a cave one time because we have the caverns in Tennessee, and it was different. It had like there was that reverb.
Yeah.
There was a point where I felt like I wasn't even able to understand the lyrics as much, but I could feel the music in my body more, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, it probably vibrated with the iron in your blood.
Right. And then being in the earth like that. Wow, I'm just now fully connecting that.
Yeah. It connected you with the iron core crystal.
Right. And it was Thievery Corporation, so they were playing like sitars and different kinds of instruments,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Pretty cool. All right. Can you talk a bit about the eighth dimension and how it's connected with the cosmic mind?
Yeah. So what's higher than the frequency that exists higher than sound would be light.
Right.
So light diffuses down into sound, and then sound into sacred geometry, and then we go from there out till we get down to three-dimensional and below. It's the organizational field of light that manifests down into 3D via the visible spectrum. Apparently Barbara Hand Clow says that the most successful way to get a feel for 8D is to contemplate the Fibonacci spiral. So you can look up the Fibonacci spiral because it shows how geometric fields can grow and contract in size. And somehow that connects your consciousness with eighth dimensional reality.
Okay.
So the pure white light of the great source, which would be, the universal logos. In Hindu mythology, it would be Parabrahman or Mahamaya, filters down and divides itself into, as if through a prism of galactic cores and stars down to the planetary systems and life found therein, as the seven rays are colors. So I think that's how we directly experience eighth dimensional reality, is through what's called the seven rays.
Right, through the color.
Yeah.
Because color is light.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so interesting. And I just now started learning more about the rays. I vaguely heard about them, but when I was going back over my notes, because in esoteric astrology, they use that rayology.
Right.
All right. And they connect it with these planetary spheres. How are we connecting to them? They're coming to us through the rays.
Yeah.
But I never thought about that as being its own dimension.
Right.
You know, but it makes so much sense looking back through my notes now that I've been kind of focusing on that, how that could be like the cosmic mind, and like how that could be how we access, you know, the planetary energies, which are connected to the cycles, which, you know, are always playing like a certain role. It's like it's all this light is coming through exactly when it should. And certain rays become more predominant at different points in our evolution, you know, where sometimes it might be, you know, the fourth ray is like the where our consciousness is at, and then sometimes it's the fifth. So it's like it's shifting all the time, you know. But she also was talking about the sun, you know, because the sun is the source of light. So just like I kind of vaguely talked about in my sound healing journey, I was shown by a fairy the sun, and the sun was a spiral, and it was also a black hole, and it was a portal, and they were like, you can meditate on the sun, right? And the sun will take you to this other realm. But in the book, she talks about this, and I even used the word white hole to explain it, because I was like, there's a black hole
And a white hole.
and on the other side
The other
there's
end
a
is the
white
white
hole.
hole where the light emerges.
Right, but I had never heard anything about this.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I opened the book, I even said the word white hole, and I perfectly documented it, because the guy that did the sound healing wanted me to write everything I'd seen down. So I had that experience, and I said, I think I would call it like a white hole, and, you know, because there was
Wow.
life on the other side. So that's just it's so interesting that I had that in the sound journey. And she said that, I think it's Humboldt's man. It's like the Mayan shaman that she works with.
Yeah.
This was a meditation that he taught her to connect to the eighth dimension. And I got taught this by some random elemental beings in a sound healing journey. So it's like, I think what he was teaching was the same thing I discovered.
Sounds like
Which
it
I
was
stumbled
the
upon.
exact same thing. Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is wild, right? But what am I doing during sound healing? Sound healing is activating the sound dimension, and all of that information comes pouring through. And I also feel like when you're doing sound healing, you're usually laying flat on the ground. You know, we had that experience together where we were outside.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're more naturally tuned into 1 and 2D.
Yeah, 1 and 2. Yeah, the two
And
are gone for
3D.
sure,
And then
yeah.
like they're banging the gongs, bringing in all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just crazy. Like, I'm having vision quests every single time I do it. And it's showing me stuff from this book.
Yeah.
Because I think there's something about those sound journeys that connect us into these other dimensions.
No question about it.
And that's how we're able to access them,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's coming directly from 7D, you know.
Right.
And what comes from 7D is filtered down from 8D. And,
Right. So you could,
9D,
through
so-
7D, you can access 8D.
Yeah.
And see, so it's sound, but it's going the other way. So when we talk about that vertical axis, it's moving up and down, you know, like forwards and backwards on the axis all the time. So it makes sense that if you can access 7D through sound, that you would also be able to connect with the eighth dimension at that same time, you know?
Yeah, apparently it comes through Orion, which is interesting because I don't know if you've ever seen this, but the Giza, the pyramid, the three pyramids, the Giza Plateau, are aligned with Orion's belt perfectly. Not only them, but the pyramids in Mexico and pyramids in China. They all form the exact same geometric shape in perfect alignment with Orion's belt.
Right.
Yeah. So it shows how all these ancient cultures were, you know, attuned to this
They
information.
knew. They knew their galactic heritage.
They did.
They knew where they came from. That's something we have forgotten. We have
Yeah.
forgotten where we come from. That's why.
It's because of that collective amnesia from the last cataclysm.
Right. And I think accessing the records is so amazing because it does help us remember who we are. And once we start remembering who we are, I feel like we access all sorts of gifts and powers that we actually accumulated over the course of our other incarnations.
Yes.
So it's been amazing for experience for me anyways to learn it. And And they explain stuff like this. So I can literally say, could you guys give me a further analysis of the eighth dimension? And they actually they'll talk about Orion. They talk about all this stuff. You just have to ask. And like, it's literally all of this information is there at all times because the records are in every dimension.
If you're not asking, then you're not attuned with it ahead of time. So there's no point in talking about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. A wise man must ask, right?
Yes.
That's the true, like, that's how you get the wisdom. You ask the question and then the answer comes. But if you're not asking questions, you're never going to.
Yeah, you're not going to ask a question unless you've formed like a conscious link to the material ahead of time.
Right.
Know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah. So just briefly, the keepers of eighth dimension are what are known as the Galactic Federation. Mm-hmm. So according to Barbara Hand Clow, they are a group of great intelligence, ascended beings that work with the third dimension. Mm-hmm. The Federation inhabits the dark nuclear center of the Milky Way, or the womb of pure creativity, which emanates through to the lower dimensions via sacred geometry. So
do you feel like this is the realm of the Ascended Masters?
Very possibly. Yeah.
You know, because that's so interesting too. Because when I'm in the records, I'll say, who's working with me? And they'll say Kuan Yin, you know, the Dijwal Cole, or sometime. But the other day it was like a chakra. They were like the Manipura. That was the guide that was working with me today.
So it's actually an entity.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. And that the planets are also entities because Mercury came through one day. And I was like, this is so wild. But what if that is, you know, that's that eighth dimension?
Yeah.
You know, and so when I'm in the records, like they're coming straight through, you know, Jesus and all the bodhisattvas and all this stuff. It's like they're right there, you know, ready to help humanity. We just have to ask for help.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah,
I think that's where they're at. That's where they're stored, I guess, is the eighth dimension.
Yeah.
Which I just now connected.
Which you just now figured out. Yeah. It helps when you start talking about this stuff because it brings a lot of insight, you know.
Right, because it is kind of hard to understand it, you know. And it's been a year since I've read this book, and there's especially now with the records, but just in general, you know, I'm meditating outside, I'm seeing the rays, you know, I'm like, but now I have something to relate it to.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like more meaningful now that I've studied this material, as far out as it is, you know. So I think people study it with an open mind. You know, you don't have to say, oh, this is 100% factual. Study it with an open mind and let the ideas open you up to the possibilities, and then see if you can have these experiences, because like they're out there. We're connected to these dimensions all the time. We're in and out.
Yeah, not only are they out there, but even if you're unconscious of it, you experience each one of them every day in your life. You know,
right.
I mean, so you're right now. You're directly experiencing each of them.
Right.
You know,
and it's subtle. You know, this is when I learned to go into the records. You know, you say the prayer, and so before I say the prayer, I'm very much in my body conscious. I say the prayer one time. I start to feel a slight shift. I say it twice. I'm feeling a little different. By the time I say it the third time, I can feel that my consciousness has now shifted.
Yeah.
My body's here. My eyes are open. I can still talk and have a sip of tea, but my consciousness is now in the records.
The prayer is a symbolic way of connecting to. It actually creates a higher dimensional frequency in your mind or your.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like you actually go there. But if you didn't know any better, you might not even notice. It's such a subtle vibrational shift. And I think, you know, many of us go in and out of the records without even saying the prayer, you know, and we don't realize that we're even there because we don't. But now I know what it feels like. And I know when I'm meditating, sometimes when I meditate, I actually feel exactly the same way I feel when I'm in the records.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's because of that vibration. I've like shifted now my consciousness, and now I'm accessing information. This is why I think these yogis and things like that are, they meditate, but then they come back and they have this story to tell.
Yeah.
And I think it's because when we meditate, we can also kind of access the records, you know, it's not usually the first time, you know, this is very practiced meditators. You know, are going there and they're doing the mantras and things like that before they sit in silence. So I feel like they're kind of turning everything on, and then they sit and they see what happens.
Yeah,
And
they
then,
sit and receive at that point. So they actively meditate in the beginning, and then
Right.
they receptively meditate.
right. But I think people
Yeah.
think that all these yogis that are sitting there for 10 hours meditating are just focused on silence. And like the silence is just sort of there to clear everything.
Absolutely.
And then you're actually, a lot of them are receiving information while they're sitting there.
Totally.
They're not just
Totally.
like in a dark, blank slate.
No, not at all. Yeah, that's a common misconception
Right.
about deep meditation. Yeah, deep meditation, you're actually accessing information.
Right. Things are
Yeah.
streaming through.
Yeah, coming through. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right. And last but not least, let's get into the ninth dimension, which is centered around time and cycles.
Yeah, so 9D is essentially the galactic core. So at the core of every galaxy is what's called a supermassive black hole, or a central sun. And Helena Blavatsky refers to the black hole at the center of our galaxy as the central sun. The Mayans referred to it as Hunapku. And the Egyptians referred to it as Ra. A lot of people think Ra is our sun, but esoterically, Ra represents the central sun. So it would be the black hole at the core of the galaxy. Science calls it Sagittarius A because you see it through the constellation of Sagittarius.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's where everything emanates. Everything in our galaxy emanates from there. So all the stars in our galaxy rotate around the galactic core in much the same way that our planets in our solar system rotate around the sun. So that's another example of the principle of correspondence. Yeah. So all the higher dimensions, they're not just 9 dimensions. There are many beyond that, and they, accessing those dimensions would be through the galactic core.
Right.
Yeah.
The 9 she focuses on because she says like these are the most relevant to us.
Yeah, they're the only ones that we can directly experience at this time.
Right. Unless you're going into the Akashic records.
Yeah.
And then because the records exist in every dimension, that's where we can study all of these other star races. And that's where those other star races learn about us, is because they are accessing the Akashic records as well from their planet. And someone might stumble upon a question that says,
Interesting.
is there another planet like ours out there? And the records might say, yes, Earth, and give coordinates, because they do give coordinates all the time. And I've actually have a friend that's an astronomer that has looked up coordinates straight from the records, and it was 100% right. It was there. He found it,
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting. Like sometimes they'll say like B182 Neptune-like planet, and I'll actually go and find it.
Oh, yeah.
So all of that stuff's, all of it's in the records, But
Yeah.
I think the 9 dimensions are the most important for us. And I think we could get a little, we don't want to go too far out that we get lost on what matters, right? Because we incarnated here on the 3rd dimension and we're connected to the 9. This is the most important for us. But, yeah.
It would be easy to get ungrounded,
Right.
if you stepped outside the 9, at least at this time.
Right.
Yeah. So the galactic core is associated with time. Apparently, time waves are emitted from the 9th dimension into 3-dimensional reality. So it actually creates our experience of linear time. Apparently, 3-dimensional reality is the only place where linear time actually exists. So it's very difficult to imagine non-linear time.
Right.
It's referred to in a lot of the esoteric teachings as duration, whatever that means.
Right.
But it's hard to imagine the elapsing of time any other way than linearly.
Right.
So again, the vertical axis is important to realize. The vertical axis is what connects one-dimensional reality to nine-dimensional reality, and it kind of goes right directly through the center of the galactic core and down through the center of the Earth's core. So it's the center of the core, the galactic core is synonymous with the Earth's core.
Right.
Just at a higher
Right. It's as above,
frequency.
so below.
Yeah. So that's another example of the principle of correspondence.
Right.
Yeah. The Mayans were very attuned to the galactic core, and it's interesting because this is before modern science even recognized that there was a black hole at the center of each galaxy.
Right.
The Mayans already knew that.
Right.
And they named it Hunabku. And the keeper of ninth dimensional reality is called Zulkan. And that's the actual name of the Mayan calendar.
Right.
Zulkan. So these people were conscious of this.
Right.
Thousands of years ago.
Right.
So
And these greater cycles that we're all, involved in. And
yeah. So for our readers out there that are really interested in the Mayan calendar, if you want to read the deepest stuff on the subject comes from a guy named Jose Argayas in a book called The Mayan Factor. So check out that book. It'll take you probably 40 years to read it, but work on it and see what you think. It's fascinating, and it goes into an incredible amount of sophistication and depth about the Mayan calendar.
yeah, I was thinking earlier, because I was thinking of ways that we could directly experience each dimension. And I was like, duh, I'm experiencing the ninth dimension all the time when I'm doing astrology, because astrology is basically the cycles, right? And it's a cycle within a cycle. It's our cycle within the greater cycle, but you can, go forwards or backwards, right?
Yeah.
And trace the patterns, and they all are interconnected, you know?
Yeah, there's so many cycles.
But all of that is ninth dimensional stuff.
Yeah.
And it is harder to understand, but I think we can if we meditate on it enough and familiarize ourselves with some of the vocabulary and
yeah, it really starts to resonate if you devote a little bit of time and energy to it, to reading about it. But it's yeah, it's fascinating. It gives you a lot of insight into the human condition and, the evolution of the human soul and, the collective unconscious. And
I think the biggest epiphany about time that I've found is simultaneous time. The thing is that time, yes, it's there and there's cycles of time, but every incarnation we've ever had still exists within simultaneous time. So that's how we're able to, really learn. Because if you die and forget everything, right, you're not really learning. But the higher self can actually tune in.
Yeah, because it exists outside of linear time.
Right. And that's where this dimension becomes more relevant, is that it's all happening right now. At the same time,
right.
Because only here do we measure it with numbers and clocks and things, and so yeah, it's time. The more I've learned about time, the more I'm like, we really don't know much about time.
No, we don't. It's interesting because science refers to time as the fourth dimension, but they don't recognize all these other dimensions,
right?
So they consider it.
They're kind of like cramming dimensions together, probably.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
No, just the name of the book that all this information comes from. It's called Alchemy of Nine Dimensions. It's written by Barbara Hand Clow.
And there's been a new edition, which is what you have, because when she first channeled it, she didn't really know about the ninth dimension. It was just straight channeled. And then she learned more about it and updated the book.
Okay.
She revised it once she learned a little bit more about the higher dimensions. Right. So that's why there's two copies. So you want to get the revised one, probably.
Yeah, the revised and expanded edition.
And she has a wonderful interview. If you have Gaia on the show Open Minds, season 2, episode 22 goes into the first 4 dimensions. And then the very next episode, season 2, episode 23, goes into 5 through 9. And this is coming straight from her.
Yeah.
And she goes into so much and really explains a lot of the science. And there's like pictures of like the scientists and things. So
Yeah.
I think watching that before you read the book is good.
Yeah. It's like reading the Cliff Notes before you read the book.
Right. And
Yeah.
it gives you kind of some visualizations because they do have some pictures up and things. So I would definitely recommend if you can do that, check out those episodes because they are really good. I've watched them 3 times now. I'm still learning new things every time.
Yeah,
because
you
it's
pick
just
up something
full
every
of
time you watch it.
information.
Yeah.
So yeah, check those out and check the book out. And... All right. Well, thank you for coming out.
Yeah, that was a
and,
lot of fun.
Yeah, sharing this wisdom with us.
Yeah.
We love it and appreciate you. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.